Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Redmond and welcome to another episode of Pastor's Library. This is the channel where I walk you around my library and we talk about books that might be relevant for a seminary course, for a bachelor's or master's degree in biblical studies or in theology. Together we just try and suss out what might be helpful to you, what might be affordable, what might probably be something to move against, or what might probably be something to ignore. So today I want to respond to a video that I did a few weeks ago that's quite popular about introductions to the New Testament, of which there are many. And one that was a message to me afterwards by a subscriber was this book by G.K. Beale and Benjamin L. Gladd, which is called The Story Retold. I have to say this book had passed me by. It came out in 2020. I hadn't seen it, but I bought it and I worked through it. And I want to sort of give you some comments on this today. And we're going to refer back to my favourite from the last batch. So this book has got the great name G.K. Beale on the front. Beale is a hugely successful theologian, someone who has written some really good works, and I'm very grateful for the books I have in my library that he has written. Now, this book, I think, has a very good look about it. It's a pastel shaded hardback. It has lots of really good illustrations in this. So if you get bored, you can just look through the pictures. This has a great deal to offer, I think, actually. It's very engaging with its 538 pages. And as you might expect from G.K. Beale, if you're familiar with his writings, this builds on an old story, the Old Testament. So what is, I would say, possibly the unique selling point of this book is this is an introduction to the New Testament that is much more related to the Old Testament. This book starts off with Genesis, and in the introduction it goes through the high points of Genesis before it ever gets on to the Gospels. This does, however, have a pretty similar layout to most of these books. Once you get into Matthew, it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, so on. And this has a clear introduction to the authorship, the supposed date, the occasion and purpose of each of these writings, gives you an outline of them, and it talks about the themes that are involved, and it goes through the theological ideas in each of them, which I think is a great way of doing it. So what we have here is we have a good bibliography written in 2020. This means this bibliography is very up to date, and it is definitely a very worthwhile piece of work in its own right. Beale and Gladd together, I think, put together something that is very helpful, very encouraging, and it takes you through everything with that perspective in mind, that this New Testament is fulfilling the Old Testament, and that they are connected, and that it's part of one great big story from God. So you'll get, for example, plenty of references back to Sinai, as you might expect. So this book, at the moment of filming this, which is November 2024, goes for about £35 in the UK. And I do think this is a very, very well made book. The binding, it seems to me to be excellent. You can leave it open at a page and it will stay there. This is really excellent in the layout, design, and so much of the appearance of this, it lends itself to being read. Beale is hardly likely to write a book that wouldn't be called academic. I mean, this is very specifically designed for introductory courses to the New Testament at university or seminary level. So this is quite clear in its purpose, and people remark on it as being very good for what it is designed to be. But what you must always remember is a book is only as good as the communication of the authors. And if something is just very, very hard to read, whatever level you are reading with it at, it's not a good book. But Beale here and Ladd, they are really excellent communicating, and they offer so much, to the point where I would have to say this would be right at towards the top end of the ones that I reviewed last time. I'm not going to say it would be my first choice, but it would definitely be up there. And now that I have it on my bookshelf, I'll be very loath to let it go anywhere. So this I would suggest is a keeper. It's a very, very good, excellent book. Now, as well as being engaging and understandable, I would suggest this is the sort of book which, if you sit down with it to read about a little bit, maybe you might read about the beginning of Mark's Gospel or something, I would suggest to you that when you actually regain your alertness, you might find you've already finished reading about Mark's Gospel and have got into Luke. It carries you along. It keeps the reader attentive and engaged. And that has got to be excellent. So for £35, it's a good one. Nobody needs a bank of introductions to the New Testament. Maybe a couple are useful to have. And this one would certainly be a good choice to go on with. But last time I did a video on this, I had as my top choice David De Silva, An Introduction to the New Testament. And I was waving about his first edition. And only when I'd filmed this and someone said to me, don't you know there's a later edition? I thought, yeah, why didn't I refer to it? And for some reason that I'd misfiled it. And so this is a 2018 edition, the second edition of David De Silva's Introduction to the New Testament. It is significantly improved, I would say. It's 866 pages. And today I could get this for £2 more than Beale, which even on the page count makes this better value. What I would say is both of them have good names recommending them, but this I think is quite outstanding in that Craig Keener says he uses this in the course he teaches. Scott McKnight raves about it. Michael Gorman says that, he can barely see why anything could come out that was better. Karen Jobes, Ben Witherington and Nijay Gupta. These are top level theologians, and they all rave about this and talk about it being the best in its category. So I would say to you that I would still suggest that this book is the best that is out there. But whereas last time I was waving the first edition at you, the second edition is without question better. I said to you that Beale and Ladd's was very good for illustrations. Actually, De Silva is better. Not only are there a great range of photos and inserts, there are sections that are on different coloured paper or different coloured background in the paper so that they stand out. And there are headers at the tops of pages which are very clear, and further reading at the end of each chapter. And of course, this being 2018, the further reading is again reasonably well up to date. So I would suggest to you that De Silva, I would still say, is probably the best introduction to the New Testament out there for me. And whereas there are other ones that I talked about last time, and of course Beale's, which I've neglected to talk about, but is clearly well worth engaging with, I just think De Silva has got the extra level of detail that 866 pages gives you. It's it wins outright on the quality of layout, the use of headers, the use of inserts in different colours, the use of coloured photographs, and its bibliography and further reading sections are absolutely outstanding. David De Silva does seem to rather outdo himself as time goes on, and I've not really been disappointed in anything he's written. I've even read some of his fiction, which is remarkably good. But this is really, I would suggest, a superb book to go into on any course. Now, if you are going to do a course, you should check the reading list before you buy, because you might find that the person teaching the course doesn't rate this, and as much as I do, and lots of people do, it might limit you if you are working from a different text to your teacher. So always check your reading list first. Always check what is the recommended text for your group. But if this is even on the list, this I would suggest is great. If you are just doing a bit of a course yourself, just trying to improve your understanding of the New Testament, then please let me stick my neck out and say this is an absolute dream, an absolutely fabulous book. Just to say, I'm currently teaching my way through 1 Corinthians. And so when I came to do this video, I thought, well, let's just see what he has to say about Corinthians. And what's quite remarkable, I think, is that he talks about the Corinthian correspondence. Now, we could say, well, that's just 1 and 2 Corinthians, but he goes a little bit further than that. And in it, he deals with a number of issues which then come up in the text. And he also shows quite relevant pictures and diagrams and maps. For example, he has a head of the goddess Tyche, or Fortune, whose face is represented on the city walls of Corinth, and talks about her and what that might have meant to religious people in the city. In this, for example, he has a section dealing in rhetorical criticism. And I would suggest to you that that section is well worth a read, and the sort of thing which helps you get a handle on the Corinthian documents and understand them well as stretching your mind and helping you to deal with a subject, an issue which is obviously going to help you. And whereas I've said to you that Beale has this huge issue of trying to integrate the old and the new, even in this section, De Silva has an insert which admittedly is only just over half a page, but it is called Paul's Use of the Old Testament in 1 Corinthians. So you will see throughout this book use of the Old Testament in the New. And that, of course, I'm sure would please G.K. Beale, but it will also please you because you won't be missing out on that, even if the emphasis is not quite as great as it is with Beale. So I'm going to now try and leave introductions to the New Testament on one side for a while. But thank you for the person who told me to read Beale, because it was a very, very good recommendation. And I'm sort of putting it high up there on the list. But David De Silva is still my favourite choice. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't done. Please click on the bell, because that does let you know when we release another episode. And until next time, everyone, I've just got this word to say to you. Bye!